Hello and welcome to an ETTO's Catch-Up. This one, we're talking all things Harley Quinn Season 2, which, I mean, it doesn't exactly feel like a second season, more so just like an extension of the first one. But let's go, as Mario says every now and then. Let's kick off with spoiler-free, Joshua, for people who want to know if they want to watch this. How'd you feel about this second half of the season?
Trust me, you want to watch this.
You do.
It's great. It's more of the same of Season 1, really. Because I loved the first season. We both loved the first season. The second season is just, I don't know, it feels just as strong as the first.
Yep.
And as we, I think, discussed on our previous podcast about Season 1, the second season was supposed to be part of Season 1 as well, but they just split it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love this. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, definitely recommend, but you have to start at Season 1.
You do.
If you haven't watched Season 1, you need to do that first. And they're super quick episodes, so you'll smash through this in like a weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're really fun, tight episodes. Thankfully, luckily, for Josh, he got to watch a lot of them at once. I had to watch them weekly on the edge of my seat. But yeah, I think it would be a really cool season, or both seasons, to binge watch, which I hate doing. I hate the idea of it. But watching them back to back, because it does just feel like one run of a comic book. It's just like one complete arc, which is really, really cool. Because one of the big things is currently we don't know if there will be another season. It's not 100% confirmed. DC Universe is falling apart. So that app is pretty much gone, and streaming services is pretty much gone. So if anything, it'll be on HBO Max. But for now, the end of this season was the end of Harley Quinn, the animated series. And I think they did very well. I think there may be a slight rush, no spoilers yet, but there might have been a slight rush to the end, probably in the hopes that they'd get everything they wanted to do out of the way, just in case they didn't get another bunch of seasons, but we'll get into that. But before we spend too much time in the spoiler-free territory, because look, if you're here, unless you're in the chat, and because I think most people haven't seen it, you've probably already seen the show, and you want to see two white boys talk about a show. And that's what we do best.
This is the only place to do that.
It's true. There is no other podcast.
This doesn't happen.
No, there's nothing else out there. Should we just go through the plot of the show? I feel like that's probably the easiest way.
Yeah.
I'll first off say, obviously the previous season basically ended with Gotham going to hell. Everything exploded. The Book of Fables was open. Everything was falling apart. The Justice League was taken inside the Book of Fables. We had no hope. We had nothing. And everything went wrong. All right. If you were Harley Quinn and co., it seemed pretty up.
Yeah, pretty much. That basically just leads to essentially what we believe at that stage is the death of the Joker and also the death of Batman.
Yes. Yeah, Batman too. I remember we discussed Batman dying in our first season pod and being like, is he dead? I feel like that was glossed over.
A little bit,
was just
right?
Kind of under the rubble.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of like that. But then when you think about it, you're like, oh, they can't kill like major characters like this. But then they just keep doing it through this whole season.
Yeah, it gets worse.
Half your big bads get murdered.
Yeah.
It's insane.
They're kind of off. So the first 4 or 5 episodes, the Injustice League is kind of formed. Although that kind of happens, but then it kind of goes away and it's really just about 3 of them. I think it's Bane. Is it Bane, Penguin? No, it's Penguin, Riddler, and Mr. Freeze have their own kind of areas. I think they're the 3.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of them do. Like, the Riddler has...
The university.
Yeah, I thought it was split up into 4 or 5. I thought they all had a section.
The only reason I have that is I feel like it was a 3-part opening of the season of bang, bang, bang of 3 big bads, but I may be wrong. Because I know that it was kind of some of them, and then it was Two-Face and Bane merged into one area, and then it turned into just Bane has a pit. Which was great. Sure. But yeah, basically the start off of this season, you get really cool. Well, the one I want to get to is Mr. Freeze, because that's probably the first big cool episode of the season. Because that
was a good pun. I like it.
I definitely intended to do that. And it was really cool. It was I said it again, but a bit of introspection into the world of Mr. Freeze, and a bit more insight. In the only way this show can do it, which is through humor. he's this kind of awkward dude because he lives alone caring for his wife. He's like trying to make them treats and stuff, but they want to leave because they're like, well, he's going to murder us, and he's not really going to murder them until they try and leave, and it just backfires.
Yeah.
And no more so than when Harley thinks she's able to free Mrs. Freeze, and it kind of goes wrong.
Nora.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he believes that. Sorry, Harley believes that Nora is like a prisoner, kind of like she was under the Joker.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she thinks, oh, I've got to free this poor woman who this guy's just obsessed with for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And won't let leave. And then by the end of the episode, because she's frozen, because she's very unwell and they don't have a cure for it, he ends up sacrificing his life using some stuff from Ivy. Yeah. Who has come to save all of them. Sacrifices his life, so he dies. He's gone.
Mr. Freeze is out.
Nora comes back and is just devastated and angry at everyone. It's intense.
It's very intense. Although I will say, I mean, I bring this up because I think it's probably the only misstep in the whole season is how they then utilize her character later. Because obviously there's a bachelorette party for Ivy, and she goes off with like one of the Themysciran like stripper men, and then that's just kind of a thing for the rest of the season, and it kind of goes against, like, you could kind of see it as a rebound, but it's a rebound that then gets invited to the wedding, so it kind of cancels out that idea of a one-off.
It's true. I hadn't really thought about that.
For me, it felt a little bit weird. It felt like it kind of missed. You had such a poignant episode about her and Mr. Freeze, and then it's like, well, she just went with the big boy.
Yeah, that is super weird. I totally hadn't thought about that, because I knew she was just like a weird, awkward character, but I don't think I'd really thought of the overall kind of weight of that and what her actions are then entailing. So that's
it's a bit unfortunate.
Potentially bigger than even they intended.
Yeah, like it was definitely obviously played for a bit of a throwaway, but it is a bit sad for Mr. Freeze.
Far out.
But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's the point that, you know, love isn't permanent or something, despite that being kind of his whole thing. But another villain that gets a spotlight early on is Riddler, who has himself a university, which it's like, I feel like there shouldn't be this many young people still in Gotham in need of schooling. They should probably have moved out at this point, right?
Yes. Yeah, especially since I think it was episode 1, the president declares Gotham basically no longer part of America.
Yeah.
So you would think that they would be given a little bit of time to get out of there if they don't want to be there before it's a different country.
Yeah.
Or like just totally
cut off from America.
Yeah. It seems insane. But I really love this episode. This is hilarious. Clayface is kind of at his best here. Yeah. Because he turns into like a young, like
preppy
university sort of, very preppy girl who, as he does in all of his roles, gets way too caught up in the role that he's actually trying to undertake.
Yeah.
So he's got a mobile phone, he's like got like boyfriends and stuff, and is just like trying to get on, like trying to be popular, trying to go to parties, trying to be on like teams of like, I don't know, probably the
cheerleading and stuff.
Cheerleaders and stuff.
Yeah.
I think, I don't remember it. Again, this has been a few months since we've watched this.
It has.
But he's just hilarious. I don't remember anything else that he does in this episode.
Or this season. He definitely gets shoveled into the, another good pun, into the background a little bit this season.
Yes.
Comparatively to the last. Almost the entire, which makes sense. I guess the whole crux of this season is Harley and Ivy and the marriage and all the rest of that. That's kind of the point. Whereas last season was forming the group, this season's almost about pulling them apart a little bit.
Yeah.
They get shoveled a little bit into the background, which is fine because Harley and Ivy, I feel like sometimes the group overpowered them a little bit. So this is just kind of a bit of a change of pace, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah. And this episode as well, this is episode 2 in the season. This episode introduces Barbara Gordon.
Yes.
Batgirl. So she comes in, she starts wanting to try and do the right thing, tries to help take out the Riddler, which she basically does with the help of, she's helping the crew, I guess. because the Riddler has been kidnapping the students from the university and making them run on treadmills to generate power. So then the team defeats him, captures him, and then makes him run on a treadmill to power the mall base thing that they got in season 1.
Yeah, and then throughout the season we end up with very muscly, bald
It's so
Riddler.
good. It is so funny. He just gets so
funny.
swole because they just make him run for like weeks or however long this season goes for, and he is just the strongest, like fittest person ever. So then he just breaks out, and I don't remember what happens to him after he breaks out.
And then ends up teaming up with Psycho for some bits and pieces.
That's right. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we might as well, on the topic of Barbara, she doesn't really come back that much in the season. There's not much development outside of that, but it's mainly about her father, Jim, who really shines throughout this season. It's like, there's 3 tiers to this. It's the group is kind of off doing their own thing. There's the marriage storyline, and there's Jim Gordon. And Jim Gordon stuff is so much fun. It's so fun.
It is, yeah. So there is a little bit of build-up of Jim and Barbara's relationship.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So Barbara eventually gets him to stop drinking.
That's right.
So he gets all sober and stuff, and way more serious and a lot more effective. But I love the sequence that they show of him getting sober.
Yeah.
It's just so dumb and fun. But you go ahead, please. Talk about Jim. I don't remember a whole lot about what he does, but I remember that it's hilarious and he's great.
It's just very fun, like, because obviously in the first season he's very needy of Batman, and everything kind of, his whole entire life relies on Batman, whereas now, to his knowledge, Batman is dead, and so he at first tries to do it all by himself, then falls into alcoholism, then gets brought out of that, and then maybe is just a little bit too strong and forward-focused.
Yes.
Am I going to get banned from the ABC for saying forward focus? Probably. But it's really interesting when he eventually gets the Batwing and stuff, like, and piloting the Batwing by himself. He's very happy with that. It's just generally, it was really cool to see, because obviously shows like Gotham and assumedly whatever the Jeffrey Wright, Robert Pattinson movie TV series is going to be, it'll be very dark and very serious, probably with very little levity. Whereas here, it's really cool to see the story of Jim Gordon in a way that only this show probably could tell, but it still feels right to the character, which is one of the biggest things the show always manages to do with everything. Like, moving straight to, like, Batman, when he does eventually come back. Throughout the first season, he was kind of straight Batman. There wasn't too much Harley Quinn-ness to him.
Yes.
Whereas once he comes back, he definitely has that vibe of the show, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think in episode 5, he really tries to come back, and that's when he gets Lucius to make him a suit because he can barely walk. He's like so weak and frail from being buried under rubble for however long that was. And yeah, he gets Lucius Fox to build him basically like an exosuit so that he can go out and fight, because he finds out that Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, he doesn't know who Batgirl is, and someone called the Marconi, which turns out to be Alfred, being like this very posh British man. It's great.
It was very good.
So apparently they're out fighting, and he's like, no one can fight but me. I need to do this myself. So then he goes out, loses to Bane, and then gets saved by Batgirl and Alfred.
Yep.
And then tells Jim Gordon that he has to work directly with Batgirl, but he doesn't know at that stage that Batgirl is his own daughter. So then that builds more of a relationship between Jim and Batgirl, Barbara, until she eventually explains her situation, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved Batgirl in the comics from what I've read, but it's like later on in her timeline.
Yes.
I think it was post New 52 and stuff. I'd be intrigued to read it back as to how similar it is, because obviously the show, the way it portrays it, is very similar to Spider-Gwen. So I'd be intrigued to know if Spider-Gwen took that kind of ideology, or if the show has borrowed a little bit of that. Whether it was originally in Batgirl's comics, or whether they borrowed a little bit from the Gwendolyn. But either way, it's a very interesting story. I guess the other big thing, unless you've got a big thing, have you got a big thing, Joshua?
I don't know how to answer that. Never mind. I was going to say that that Penguin was murdered, but we already talked about that. I totally forgot that we talked about that. I was gonna jump to that.
We glossed over the fact his nose came off.
Yes. I guess what we can talk about is that in one of the episodes, Kite Man proposes to Ivy. I don't think we even mentioned that. So we sort of have already talked about a wedding and stuff. But yeah, I don't think we brought up Kite Man tries to steal a ring from Dr. Trapp's museum when they're trying to get a flamethrower. The whole team, main team, is trying to get a flamethrower to break into Mr. Freeze's lair. Tries to get a ring to propose to Ivy. He proposes to Ivy. There's a bunch of weird drama and stuff that happens, and she says no, and then she gets him to ask again, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Kite Man and Harley, and Ivy, not Harley, are engaged. So then for the whole season, they're trying to organize their wedding.
Yeah.
Which is why there is also a bachelorette party and some other things. And classic Condiment King, as usual, comes back. He's also engaged and is also looking for a like wedding venue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just always seems to be like a step ahead of Kite Man and Ivy. And Kite Man is just so determined to get everywhere that Condiment King ends up getting. And like he's so upset. He's basically like a bridezilla about all of this himself. He's just so he's so weak and just like sad every time Condiment King is just a little bit ahead. It's so dumb. It's just this dumb ongoing joke. But the fact that Condiment King ever existed in the DC universe at all is amazing, and I love how they use him in this.
It's very fun. I almost feel like the Lego Batman movie stole their thunder. Like, if the Lego Batman movie hadn't included Condiment King, the general pop culture universe would be like, whoa, I've never heard of this. They still play him really well, and the joke is very funny, but it's like, we would be shocked that he exists, let alone what he's like. But yeah, he's so much fun. I still don't know if I feel bad for Kite Man. I feel like the dude never... And I mean, it is the point. He was confiding in Poison Ivy because he finally found someone that might like him. I don't think he ever really stopped to realize if she was the right person. He just kind of went, that's it! This is what I'm doing now. This is the only person that matters. And I think that might have... The blind side of that made him a bit annoying, because I'm like, dude, you know that you shouldn't be bothering. Just move on. Which eventually he gets there. But so I don't know if I feel as bad for him as I probably should in the end of the series, where, spoilers, we'll just say the thing, Ivy is the thing, they kiss, they're together, it happened.
Yeah, finally.
It worked out.
Finally. The thing that you're expecting for most of season 1 actually happens by the end of this. I'm intrigued to know where they go with that, because... shows are generally so much more interesting when there's a lot of tension like that. Yeah. But now they've released all that tension. So, like, I hope that this can push forward with the same amount of levity that it has so far. Like, I'm currently watching through The Office, and there's that Pam and Jim kind of tension the whole time because Pam's engaged, but they're both kind of in love but don't talk about it. I remember watching it years ago, and I can't remember specifically because I know it was a great show for many, many, many seasons beyond when Jim and Pam actually end up getting together. But there's just, I think that show and potentially other shows, there is a risk of releasing the tension that a lot of people are there for.
The benefit of this show is that it is a relationship that exists already. So I guess it's less of a will they, won't they tension, and more like get to the bit where they're together so we can continue. I guess there's a little bit less of that. Like for new people that aren't familiar with the characters, absolutely, it would have that. But I think they've got a little bit of a trump card. What's another word? Chance card? Anything else but that. But... just that it already exists, it almost feels it's less tension and more like a plot point to finish and then move on with. And also, even though there is a bit of tension, I feel like it's this, like, that tension won't go away. like, I feel like they're gonna still be pretty awkward with each other, because they are in the comics. Like, they're not lovey-dovey with each other. They're still very awkward human beings.
Yeah,
because they
fair.
are very awkward human beings. we should be safe, but also we don't know if there's another season, so we might not have to worry about that either.
Yes. I would love another season. I would love for this not to be the end, as it actually ended. That would be great for another season. What else do we have? What else is in here?
Rewind. Joker is normal because he fell into
That's
the
right.
acid that should have turned Harley normal. I can't remember if it was supposed to turn her normal as well. I don't remember. I think it was. I think he was getting rid of what he made her or something. But Joker's a normal human being, and in the months past the incident, he became a normal person with a wife that already had children, and lived his normal life and became a... What's the word I'm looking
Bartender?
for? Bartender.
Yeah.
That's the one.
And he actually ends up working at Wayne Tower, at a bar in Wayne Tower, which is bizarre. So
funny.
I think they discover that he's normal pretty early on, but the whole time they're like, is it actually him? kind of thing. Like, the whole time they're questioning it. But then he comes back working at a different bar in Wayne Tower later in the season. And this one, or the next few episodes, revolve very heavily around him, because the bar gets raided by some people. I don't know.
I think there's Two-Face thugs. I think that
could be
Two-Face.
something like that. Yeah. And then so Harley and him end up escaping together. She finds out what actually happened to him, and that whole backstory. And then she's like, well, I kind of need you to be Joker right now. So then she pushes him into the vat of acid to bring him back. And then that's so that he remembers where the Book of Fables is, because he had it last, and he hid it at his wife's house, Bethany's house.
Bethany?
And so he has to go and reconcile with Bethany, and they end up staying together, even though he's like, I'm still going to be the Joker now that I'm the Joker again.
Yeah.
But Bethany, I hope you will still take me back and we can be in this relationship, which is just so damn funny.
It's very funny.
And she takes him back. So she's dating this super evil villain that she nursed back to health without realizing it was him.
Aren't they like watching the TV as the big end battle happens? Like, they're just at home? Once he's just settled back in at home?
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing...
Something
everything's
like that.
normal.
It's so weird. It's one of the things that this show does really well. They grab what you think you know and they twist it, but they don't wreck it.
Even with King Shark, obviously we've had him as a tech genius for all of the previous season. When the Bachelorettes go, I don't know how these, I've never gone on one of these things. All the boys hang out together, and King Shark gets a message to have to go back underwater, back to his clan of people, to marry and become the king and all the rest of it that always happens in things. And because it's this show, the person he has to marry also doesn't want to get married, but is also just like a drug addict shark that's like a little bit sleazy and a little bit gross.
Yep.
Which is just bizarre. And like, I love that, a few of the episodes are opened with the two comic geeks in their home, because it's like, those are the people. Those are the people that are going to hate this. Because I'm sure I've never seen any hate for the show. I'm very happy to the Reddit is completely wholesome of it, all the threads and everything. But I'm sure there's a percentage somewhere that every time these things happen, they go insane.
Probably.
They're like, what are you doing to my show?
Yeah.
And then they keep watching, because that's what they do best.
Absolutely. But far out, that beginning and end episode, I think it was like episode 5 or something.
It was like halfway, yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. Like, just so meta. And it was, one of them had to release the Snyder Cut shirt, which I think like the week that I watched it, it had been released.
Yeah.
Which was weird. Like, I watched it right at that time when they announced that it was actually going to happen. So that was like mind-blowing for me, even though it was probably like 2 months prior. Like the actual episode had been released. But yeah, that was so good.
And the other one had the Last Jedi sucks or something, or it's the opposite. I think, but something like that.
Something like
which
that,
is great. And it was funny because that was the Batman episode as well, because they were like ranting about the fact that, oh, the show's about Harley Quinn, I don't care about that. And then they looked at the description and it was just an episode about Batman.
That's right.
It's so great because it gives a reason for that episode to solely focus on Batman. Because otherwise, if you were watching the show, you'd be like, that was weird. That was just Batman. But they found a meta-narrative for it to fit into their canon. It's also a question of, like, I kind of hope that those guys are in their universe so that they can turn up. Like, I don't know how they would, but that would be great. Get Dr. Fate to bring him through. Does that what he do? I don't know.
Is that what he do?
Is that what Dr. Fate do?
Yeah, I have no idea, but that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And, like, they could just so easily do that, like, for whatever reason. Like, they don't need to explain why, I don't think. They're just... These guys are just watching a show that happens to be exactly what's happening in their reality. Who cares? It's fine. Yeah, it's a Harley Quinn animated series. Anything happens.
It doesn't matter.
There's a talking shark and talking clay.
There is a talking clay.
It doesn't...
Talking... oh, he's gone. Tony Hale. There we go. I got there.
Oh, so good. One other thing that we haven't mentioned, and surprisingly, before we started recording this, we were talking about it. There is an introduction of Darkseid.
There is.
In one of the episodes, like the biggest bad of DC, and we barely remember the episode at all. It sort of falls by the wayside for some reason.
Yeah. As I said to you, I think it's probably the reset back into just focusing on marriage, because I think that might have been the tail end of taking down the Injustice League's areas.
Yeah.
I guess they just needed to get Harley Quinn back into the spot of Poison Ivy not wanting to be with her, because I think there might have been a few episodes leading into that, and so it was just a bit of a, like, mid-season reboot. But yeah, that was a pretty wild episode. She had a cool suit when she had the staff. Yeah. That's the main thing I remember, the chainmail thing. That was cool.
Yeah. So she basically goes to the universe or wherever Darkseid is, goes to him and asks for a parademon army. She has to prove herself by fighting Granny Goodness, who I also looked up and is actually part of the DC universe. There's an old lady called Granny Goodness. I don't know what she does, who she is. I'm gonna look that up super quick. Abilities: immortality, which makes sense because she was very, very hard to kill. Superhuman physical attributes, great leader and tactician, skilled warrior, and wields Mega Rod and advanced technology.
Mega Rod. That sounds like something they wrote for the show.
Yeah, it really does. Introduced in Mr. Miracle Volume 1, Comic 2 in May of 1971.
Wow.
Created by Jack Kirby.
There you go.
The man.
It seems unexpectedly early. Like,
yeah.
I feel like that's just surprising.
This makes a lot of sense. This one of the paragraphs of her fictional biography says Darkseid had Granny Goodness run the training facility for his elite soldiers, where she used brainwashing and torture in a brutal parody of childcare to turn the innocent into fanatical warriors willing to kill or die for Darkseid's glory. So that makes sense why she's there with him and why they have to go through Granny Goodness to get to the army.
That's clever.
Yeah. So they use freaking legit lore. That's awesome. Far out.
I feel like, if we got into the nitty-gritty of this show, everything they did is probably right.
Yeah.
Which is why it's even funnier that people would be angry about it, because it's like, it's coming from a place of lore, which is pretty fun.
Yeah. And, like, just the fact that they managed to find these super weird characters and put them exactly where they should be. Like, it's insane. It's so weird that they managed to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. I think in this one as well, Ivy gets brainwashed and then is trying to kill Harley. And I forget what breaks her out of it. It's probably a kiss, maybe.
True love's kiss. It was True love's kiss.
Yes. So then that's when Harley, I think, tries, or is that where she actually tells her feelings? No, not yet, because the next episode is The Bachelorette party.
Not yet.
My bad. Yeah, but she tries, can't. Anyway.
There's some things that happens in The Bachelorette party that need to happen before Dr. Psycho shows the world some imagery.
Yeah.
Which was surprising. There's woohoo in this season, which is, It's interesting. I'm sure a great part of the internet. I'm sure there's many pictures. And you know what? It's a very cool and terrifying moment for old mate Kite Man when Harley and Ivy's nights in paradise are streamed into the world.
Yeah, super weird.
But Dr. Psycho, little shit.
He's such
Little
a
shit.
douche.
Yeah.
He's so insane.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Psycho.
That's the point.
I have nothing else to say there, so we can move right on.
We move on.
I do like that episode, The Bachelorette, for the other twist, like, because they're on Themyscira, Wonder Woman's island, and for some reason it has been turned into like this island paradise that you can go to.
It's a tourist destination.
And like a resort, yeah. So it's basically a resort where you can go and chill out with your peeps. So they do that for her bachelorette party, but they're all like, this is weird because this is not what Themyscira stands for. Like they wouldn't do this, and you find out that that the Queen has been hypnotized by someone, I can't remember who it was,
I can't remember.
to make her sell Themyscira to LexCorp. So LexCorp controls Themyscira and is just making money off it.
Yeah.
Yes, but obviously while they're there, they break that kind of mind control, hypnotism, and save Themyscira before just moving on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really cool that, you know, that gets that because, you know, Gotham is destroyed and obviously the Justice League are gone, and that includes Wonder Woman. It's cool that they address that elements of the universe have also changed because of that event. It's not limited to just Gotham, because Wonder Woman's not there to kind of stop the bad things happening on Themyscira. Themyscira gets ruined. I feel like something happens with Aquaman. I feel like there was an Aquaman thing in this season. Can't remember, but something he popped in for a little bit.
Would he have just popped in on the King Shark episode?
Yeah, I feel like it may have been the King Shark episode.
Yeah.
With his full-on blonde hair. But yeah, it's cool that, you know, that episode's probably one of my favorites of the season, because it's really fun as well, because you do get the King Shark stuff, which was cool to give him a bit more, because King Shark's, for the most part, a bit of a one-note character. He doesn't really get to do much, like Clayface and Psycho. He kind of is there to make a funny quip. He's basically the plant, but a shark.
Yeah.
For a lot of the time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it sounds about right. He's also almost kind of a voice of reason, which is really funny because sharks aren't usually that.
Yeah,
so
totally.
He's kind of got a bit more of a logical perspective on a lot of things. Yeah, it kind of, I feel like it makes sense that he would
balance out the team.
Like, he makes sense in the idea of the whole team, because there's no one else like him. They need someone that has a bit more of a level head than everyone else. But yeah, he's kind of fairly in the background.
Have you got anything else specific before we just talk about specifics?
Not really. The only thing I was going to mention was the joke, but if we're like the joke, the one,
the joke,
one
the
joke.
only joke. I've got one before that joke.
Go for it.
I remembered one extra on, which is in the episode where normal Joker and Harley are in Wayne Tower and all that stuff's happening, and there's two goons sitting with each other, and one goon's talking about the fact he hasn't seen his family and his children in a long time, and he's debating on whether he should go back and spend time with them. Then Harley runs in, the least intimidating guys. They weren't doing anything, and she grabs a gun and shoots one of them, and nothing happens. She's like, what happened? And then they pan down, and the gun is called a cancer ray, and the guy goes, Harley Quinn just gave me cancer. Well, that's it, Kev. I'm going to spend the holidays with my kids, and just runs off. And it is so quick and so unnecessary.
It is. It's, yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. I was racking my brain. I knew there was something else. The cancer ray. It's so sudden.
It's so funny. It's so quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. But the joke, which I recorded and watched back so many times.
Yeah.
I recorded on my phone just to send to people because it was so damn funny. There's an episode, I think it's mainly the Batman one, where Two-Face and Bane team up. But Two-Face is kind of like, I'm going to run this, but just use Bane for his power. But Bane doesn't know that. So they do they kind of create a brand and I think it's like two faces or something,
Yeah.
but it just looks like Two-Face, so no one can really tell because everyone, like, it just looks like it's a Two-Face thing.
Yeah.
Bane is nowhere to be seen on any of the branding. And even on the image, there's a picture of Two-Face, and then it's got like his shadow in the background, and that's where this joke comes in. It's so good, where Bane's like, "I'm not even on there. What do you like? Where am I on this branding? Everyone's just going to think it's you." And Two-Face is like, "No, look, you're right there. You're in the back, like the shadow." And he's like, "Well, yeah, I was born there, but that's not me." It's like it's so good. I'm not doing justice to it at all.
It's so, but it is that mumbly Bane voice that he has that makes it so good, because it is. It's like, that's you there, and then I think I found the right words. I think it's, that's you there in the shadows, and he goes, no, I see the shadows, I was born there, but that's not me.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's so quick again. Like, it's just so quick. They say it and they move on.
Yeah.
And you barely have time to laugh unless you just pause it and rewind and rewatch it a billion times.
Yeah.
So damn quick and funny. Everyone knows it, but the Nolan Batmans is where that comes from.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing of the first season where he's like, "Oh, we're gonna blow up Gotham Stadium."
Yes.
It's the same.
Exactly.
Same kind of fun that the show has.
A couple of episodes later, there is an episode where Harley and Ivy get sent to the pit, which is Bane's pit again from the Nolan Batman films. But it's basically a rehabilitation center for bad guys. But all the bad guys are there for life, so they get rehabilitated, but they can never leave. And Bane ends up basically he's almost like a camp scout or something, like a camp counselor. And so he's like running craft and having these creativity meetings and stuff like that. It's so bizarre. So freaking funny. And yeah, they for whatever reason they get George Lopez. He's a comedian.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
I think he's comedian and like does ETTO, one of those sort of shows. I think he's the host of.
Sure.
One of those entertainment shows.
So yeah, he's coming for whatever reason for part of like this talent contest night, whatever. And Harley Harley and Ivy have this plan to escape. They try and escape, and it fails, but then they end up causing this huge riot, and then they escape. And I think that's actually one of the first times that they kiss.
Yeah, it's the big kiss.
Well, they're trying to get out, but they weigh too much, as these things always happen. So Harley basically lets go, or forces her to let go, drops down. Ivy gets out, but manages to get out and then get a plant to save Harley before she dies. And because there's so much adrenaline and all of that, that's their first kiss.
It's very good. And then it's just, it ends, it's a silent credits. I think a dog barks. It's very awkward. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so clever.
The endings of a lot of these episodes are huge. Like, just going into the credits, there are so many times where the credits are just silent.
Yeah, because it's so awkward.
Because they want to leave you hanging, and they just want to hit you right in your heart. Like, it's insane. It's so, I don't know, it's really, really clever. It's really cool. I love how they do this.
This show is so good. And the trickiest thing is, yes, currently it's very hard to access, and I feel like very hard to sell to people, because either you already love Harley Quinn, you've already probably watched this, or you don't like Harley Quinn and you don't want to watch this. There's not really two streams you're in. It'd be very hard to, for me, even personally, because I don't like The Big Bang Theory. Like, it would be hard to convince someone, watch the thing with Kaylee Cuoco voicing Harley Quinn, because you're like, I don't like her in The Big Bang. I don't watch this show. There's so many things that shouldn't have worked. But it is just one of the greatest animated superhero series that they've ever put out. It's just so solid.
It just currently feels like the best DC thing that they're making.
Yeah, right?
The movies, the last few movies have been good. They've been fun.
Up.
Like, they've been pretty damn good, a lot of fun. But this is it's just another level. Like, they're doing something really freaking unique and fun and interesting, and like they're reaching right back into their history to make interesting and fun plot points. Like we've discovered many more just discussing it now. The fact that Granny Goodness actually existed and that she did work for Darkseid, like all of that now suddenly makes sense. It's really, really cool. They've done such a good job. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm done. I think I'm done talking about it. Just go freaking find it and watch it, please. It's so good.
Please track it down. I mean, we've gotten Titans through to Netflix, but no Doom Patrol or anything else. So hopefully they come to Australia in some form at some point. But, you know, there's ways to find this show. Yes. But yes, please watch it. I think it's 26 episodes, easy entertainment in a week.
Yeah. 26 for both seasons.
Yes.
13 per season, not just for season 2. And they're only like 20 to 25 minutes each. So,
yeah.
Like, so quick. I smashed through it in a weekend, I think.
Yeah.
And I had time around that to go do other things. So, like, it's so easy to get through. And it's so easy to watch. It's just, you barely have to even think. No. It's such a simple show, but there is a lot of complexity and interesting stuff happening.
It'd be good to rewatch now. I'm sure there's lots of things that are tucked away. But if you want to rewatch this podcast, you can certainly do it. If you're only listening to it now on Spotify, you can jump on over to youtube.com/each to their own and watch it, because we use our webcams now. We didn't buy them for no reason. They're on.
That's right.
They're recording. And if you're on YouTube, you can go to Spotify, lots of letters, because Spotify still doesn't know how to friggin' make URLs. It's disgusting. Oh, dear. Yep, I've been Will.
And I have been Josh.
See you, bye, everyone, for a bit.
Bye, everybody. Love you.